tonight we wanted to do the Zehringer grocery, and was a Zehringer building that still has Zehringer at the top. All you Zehringers know that. That says 1912, and so that preceded the grocery, right?
That's correct.
All right, you want to tell them all about it?
Sure.
Everybody know Jim? I figured you didn't do it.
Well, thank you, Helen, and hello, everyone. It's really great to be back at Fort Recovery tonight, and here in this Opera House building. Every time I come back to Fort Recovery, there's always a new project. And this project, again, Helen and Cy, Nancy, and I think there's a lot of the committee members here. What a project this is, and this is what makes Fort Recovery really a great place to live. I want to thank you for organizing these talks, Helen, about the businesses. What a great way to preserve the memories of these businesses. It's been about 55 years since we locked the doors at Zehringer Grocery, but tonight we're going to turn back the hands of time a little bit. I want to recognize all the Zehringers here this evening, and my first cousins from Dayton are here. And it's so nice. We've been trying to get a Zehringer reunion for 20 years. We can't. And Helen, you did this like and it's great to see Rita Brooms and Pat Waltz. Because we'll talk about them a little bit tonight. Our dads, Jerry and Jim, thought the world of them. They were such a smiley face like they still have now. And they treated you right. So that was great. So John Henry Zehringer was born on Christmas Day in 1879, and he was named after his dad, Henry Zehringer, and his mother was Margaret Cashman. And 101 years later, on Christmas Day, we had a son named John Henry. We named him John Henry Zehringer. And so...
and born on Christmas Day.
I'm set.
And born on Christmas Day.
Born on Christmas Day, that is correct. 101 years to the day later. In 1900, at the age of 22, John bought the Reesner House Hotel, and that's set where the Zehringer building is right now, because he saw a need for people that were arriving by train, as Helen mentioned before. A lot of people came by train. So he owned the Reesner House Hotel first. 2 years later, on September 2nd of 1902, he married Elizabeth Brandy from Sharpsburg. And he started a tradition of marrying Sharpsburg girls. My dad married Rita Fortcamp, and of course I married Sharon. And they were married at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Sharpsburg. And as soon as they were married, they moved to their new home on Wayne Street. And that's where his First Financial Bank is today. Now, when John and Elizabeth got married, they had 12 children. And most of them had nicknames, and we'll see if you can remember some of these. Aunt Mary Zimmerman was just called Joe. Aunt Dolores Fikey was Peachy. Uncle George was Whitey. Everyone knew Uncle Jerry. Zeke. Aunt Loretta was Aunt Doll. She lived in Saginaw. Now, my Aunt Florence, I don't think had a nickname, but her husband was Arthur Rose, and he had quite a few nicknames. I was going to pick up Tom Rose tonight. I wouldn't have told that joke. My dad didn't have a nickname, but he went by Jimmy, and his name was Ernest. I don't think Uncle Bill had a nickname, did he, Ron? No. And I don't think John, your father, was just Johnny. I don't even think they called him Johnny Jr. But that was kind of a thing with this Zehringer family. John, Grandpa John, had a sister called, she was Aunt Mame, and she married George Gabley. And of course, they had a son by the name of Dana. And that was Pink. So, and then of course, they had another son. He had another brother that was Otto, and they called him Pick. And then Pick had a son, and then that was John, and they had Rick and Randy Zehringer. So that's how the Rick and Randy Zehringers match up. So in 1912, John tore down that Reesner Hotel, and he erected a modern, large hotel and bar. Then just 3 years later, in 1915, He traded that hotel to Hiram Green, he was from north of town, for a farm. And it was comprised of 244 acres, and it's set at the corner of 49 and Zehringer Road. Now, I don't know if they named it Zehringer Road after Grandpa moved there, or if that was the road. Maybe, Jeannie, you know that, I don't know. But,
I'm so young, I don't know any of this.
Jeannie has been dying to say that all along. So anyway, Bob and Lucille Bergman bought that in 1957 after Grandpa's estate was settled, and I believe it's in the Bergman family yet today. Now, in 1920, this is where the store comes in. In 1920, John bought the grocery business from Bill and Coral Snyder. And Coral Snyder lived right next to us. We had Coral, Deanie, and Lola, and they never got much sleep. So anyway, they bought and that was in the Hall building. And at about the same time they bought the store in 1920, an organization was forming in Muncie called the Clover Farm Stores. And Grandpa Zehringer, at that time in 1920, joined up with Clover Farm Stores, and you can see a lot of Clover Farm. Bob Van Treese made those 2 paintings. You can see what the Clover Farm logo looked like. And he was with, in 1949, there was a journal article celebrating, or 1950, celebrating the 30th anniversary of our store, of the Zehringer store, and James A. Goddard, who owned the Clover Farm system, came and talked to Jim and Jerry and Grandpa at the time. So it remained a Clover Farm affiliate for more than 40 years. And I did a little research on Clover Farm stores, and most of them closed in the mid-60s. So they were all small stores, that mom and pop stores. Now, in the early years, the store was known for trading and delivering. Mary Rose Bergman wrote in her Memories of Fort Recovery that their family would never consider trading with anybody but John H. Zehringer. The weekly ads in the journal gave prices for eggs, chicken, lard, hides, pigeons, ducks, geese, rabbits, and just about anything you could trade or sell. Bob Van Treese told me one time, whenever he needed money, he would find some roosters and sell them to Johnny. Grandpa told me one time he must have one hell of a rooster farm. And you all knew Bob Van Treese didn't have a rooster farm. Now, Zehringer's Grocery was known for its delivery from the very beginning through Jim and Jerry. And during World War II, there was an ad. I don't know if you found that, Helen. I know you showed it to me. I don't know if you have it up here. But it said because of their son Jerome, Jerry, had joined the service, they had to discontinue delivering because that made 4 boys, Jim, Jerry, Bill, and John, all in the service at the same time. And he didn't have anybody but Ralph to deliver, so he was short-handed. John was a big believer in advertisement, whether they were ads, like you see many of them here, or giveaways like Mike Stein brought a nice thermometer, and all these are giveaways that he gave, from broom handles to thermometers to tobacco pouches. My favorite was a mirror, a little round mirror, and it had a penny in the back. And it said, "You'll never go broke shopping at Zehringer's Grocery." And I lost it. Sometimes his ads were more of opinions on why you should shop at Zehringer's Grocery. There were 6 grocery stores in town, and he knew he needed to inspire loyalty. Those stores were Grievenkamp's Market, Dahl's Home Store, Bunderhaar's Market, Pinky Gavely and Mel Bergman's IGA and Kroger, Luther Brum's, and of course Zehringer's Grocery. And there was much competition. Now, I don't remember Grandpa because he died when I was 4. But several people told me he was a good businessman and he loved to whistle. And I can remember my Uncle Jerry always had a whistle worked into his conversation. In 1946, Elizabeth died, and a year later, in 1947, John turned the business over to Ralph and Jim and Jerry. In 1950, Ralph died. And then Jim and Jerry continued to operate the store as Zehringer Brothers. Now, here are a few memories of the late 50s and early 60s. Busy Saturday mornings, busy Saturdays. Saturday mornings was usually the local people in Fort Recovery that would shop, and then Saturday evenings, that's when the farmers would come to town, and they'd stay there until the silver dollar drawing was over. Our walk-in cooler. We had a huge walk-in cooler in back of the store, and we always kept a jug of water in there that was always nice and cold. And it was always a good place to slip in and sit and enjoy a hot day. Sorting pop bottles. This was the first job that I did, and I did it with my brothers and my cousins Mike and Bob. And by the way, Mike Zehringer couldn't be here tonight, but he's on the phone, correct? Mike, can you hear us?
Well, I had to mute him.
Okay.
I love it.
But anyway, Jeannie's going to come.
Oh,
You just started.
I didn't touch it.
Mike remembers a lot of the great memories that we have, and Jeannie is going to share some of those memories in just a little bit. But sorting pop bottles was a neat challenge because, you know, we had, everybody would bring their Pepsi and Coke and 7-Up and all that back together and unsorted, and the pop drivers would only pick up theirs, and just a neat job that we had to do. Learning to bag groceries correctly with the help of Rita Bruns, Pat Mays, and Dennis Borgening. How many remember Dennis Borgening? Dennis would, during the Jubilee out here, would spend $50 to win a teddy bear. I used to watch it. Anyway, cans and frozen food on the bottom, and eggs and butter and bread up on top. We used to advertise Rita Bruns as the fastest checked out girl in town. And look at these. There's so many pictures of Rita and Pat in the pictures because Dad and Jerry loved Rita and Pat, and so did the community.
I got to tell you something about being fast. My dad used to tell me, Mary, if you can work as fast as you can talk, you're going to be okay.
Anyway, another great job that we had to do was siphon vinegar into gallon jugs at this little white hose, and this 55-barrel would come to our back door, stay outside, and we'd fill that. I know Mike wants to talk to that, but we had to scrape away the mother. Does anybody know what the mother? Yeah. This was the grossest job ever. We'd load up our odd pop bottles, like knee-high RC Cola burners, things we didn't sell in the store. We'd load them up in a wagon, bring the Luther Brum. That was like a 20-mile trip for little feet, and I know that was one of Mike's memories too. I think he might share that. Every year, Jim Boggs, I think he was from Macedon.
Yeah.
Jim Boggs would bring in a rabbit at Easter. And so our store was tiny to begin with, and we had this rabbit in a cage about this big that did what rabbits do. We unloaded